So good morning, dear Deputy Minister, dear Mr. Eybalin, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, dear all. It is my distinct pleasure and honor to welcome you to the 8th Energy Transition Symposium, organized by the Hellenic Association for Energy Economics. This event has already become a tradition in the energy dialogue in Greece. Just a few days ago, the United Nations reported that the dystopian future of climate change is already here and focused on unprecedented weather events. We all know that our country recently experienced major floods in Thessaly, while just 1 month ago, the largest wildfire in Europe devastated a huge part of the Adria National Park. The anticipated recovery cost for Thessaly floods for the local community and economy is estimated to above €2 billion, while the cost of the destruction of the Adria forest ecosystem is uncountable. On the other hand, the World Energy Outlook that will be published in a few days by the International Energy Agency will for the first time forecast that demand for oil, natural gas and coal will all peak before 2030. According to Fatih Birol, the head of the International Energy Agency, we are witnessing the beginning of the end of the fossil fuel era, and we have to prepare ourselves for the next era. It shows that climate policies do work. That's what Fatih Birol says. But is this really true? I'm very annoyed and angry to hear many voices, even in our country, saying that we spend so much money in renewables and all the green technologies that make our energy so expensive. This is a completely incorrect and extremely disorienting statement. Please allow me to quote some recent data. The G20 members provided a record $1.4 trillion in public subsidies to support fossil fuels only in 2022. That amount, which includes fossil fuel subsidies, investments by state-owned enterprises, and lending from public financial institutions, is more than double compared to the 2021 level, which already was 5 times almost higher than those seen in 2020. The 2022 rise in subsidies was driven mainly by governments dramatically expanding support to help consumers deal with peaking fossil fuel prices after Russia's invasion to Ukraine. On the other hand, the total sum of subsidies that the G20 countries announced for renewable power generation between 20 and 22 June is one big but still very small number, $265 billion. More than 5 times less compared to 1 year's subsidies paid for fossil fuels. But we also hear some energy experts saying that we have imposed severe carbon taxation in fossil fuels. Well, this is another joke. The average carbon tax for the G20 members countries is $3.2 per ton CO2 equivalent, which is a minor share of the record profits that the fossil fuel industry gained last year at the peak of the energy crisis. For the EU member states, the total average of fossil fuel subsidies per year from 2015 to 2021 was $52 billion a year, while for the same time period, the average for renewables was $73 billion. In Greece, the 7 years from 2015 to 2021, the average per year state subsidies in fossil fuels were €2.19 billion, while the corresponding number for renewables was slightly higher. Artificially lowering the price of fossil fuels is extremely problematic because it increases burning of fossil fuels, intensifying human-induced climate change and making extreme weather events like heat waves, wildfires, severe rains and hailstones more frequent and intense. Shifting less than $1/4 of the trillions of dollars generated from fossil fuel subsidies reform and carbon taxation could help close the wind and solar energy investment gap, which is estimated almost to $450 billion per year until 2030, to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius, with public support leveraging of additional funds from private investors. It could also be used to help end world hunger, provide universal access to electricity and clean cooking globally, close the climate finance gap that developed countries have already committed to mobilize for developing nations. Removing subsidies could also save thousands of lives by reducing fossil fuels-related air pollution, which is responsible for over 5 million deaths per year in G20 only, and 1 in 5 deaths globally. These figures are an absolute reminder that the plain truth for today's reality is that we heavily subsidize fossil fuels and not renewables, throwing massive amounts of public money into fossil fuels despite the increasingly devastating impacts of climate change. Please don't forget this. We are so lucky to live in the energy transition era. Hopefully, some decades ahead, we will be producing energy without harming and destabilizing our planet, and maybe fossil fuels will only be museum exhibits. Climate change has now turned into climate crisis, and this is clearly the factor that must trigger an intense acceleration for the energy transition. Luckily, this transition will comprise a puzzle of actions and multitude of actors. More or less everybody in the energy sector, as we know it today, will play a role. Green policies and policymakers will lead. Sustainable technologies and related companies will follow. Green investments and funding schemes will be necessary. As we stand on the threshold of the conference, please bear in mind that the Hellenic Association for Energy Economics tries hardly to provide insights and boosts public awareness in these topics, organizing events like the one we have today, and publishing several reports, among others the annual Greek Energy Market Report, which is powered by the National Bank of Greece, the monthly chart of the month, which is powered by Deloitte, and the quarterly report In Focus, which I all invite you to download by our website. It is time to reconsider from a different perspective the multiple aspects of the energy transition under the pillars of sustainability, social viability, security, and democracy. We have to rethink energy, which is the title also of this year's conference, as you can see it. Once again, I extend my warmest welcome to each and one of you. Thank you for being part of this critical conversation. So I have to thank the Council for Cooperation and Cultural Action of the French Embassy in Greece, the Director of French Institute, Mr. Nicolas Eybalin, who will be the next to address and thank you for hosting us here in this very beautiful room, an excellent space for our conference. So the floor is yours.
Bienvenue à l'Institut français de Grèce, καλώς ήρθατε στο Γαλλικό Ινστιτούτο Ελλάδος. Welcome to the French Institute in Greece. Your work will focus today and tomorrow and after tomorrow on the present and the future. So you will forgive me if I also introduce a major dimension of our existence. I mean that of the past. France has a network of cultural institutes throughout the world. The particularity of the French Institute in Greece is that it is the oldest of the whole network. Well, not exactly. This is the second oldest. The first one was founded in 1904 in Italy, in Florence. But let's forget Florence and let's say that Athens, established in 1907, was the first one. And next to the institute, you have the French School of Archaeology, which was established in 1846, and that was the first French higher education institution established abroad, and that was in Athens, in Greece, 30 years before the second School of Archaeology, the German one, in the 1870s. So those little facts remind us of the long-standing relationship of cooperation and trust that has been established between modern Greece, from the moment it was reborn as a nation state, and my country. The French Institute is not a French institution. It is, in my view and in the view of many, a Franco-Greek institution. And I would even go so far as to say an institution of the city of Athens. So much so that it is part of the landscape and history of the city. Some of you may have come here by taxi, and my experience has shown me on many occasions that all you had to do was tell the driver, Gallico Instituto, without giving the exact address, and he would immediately know where to go. The Institute took part in the often tragic events that affected Greece in the last century. I would just mention one fact in particular, and this is interesting because this is the centenary we are commemorating, the mass arrival in Greece, in Athens in particular, in 1922 and 23, of hundreds of thousands of Greek refugees driven from Asia Minor, from Turkey. One of the Institute French teachers, Octave Merlier, who later became its director until 1961, and his Greek wife, Melpo, set about visiting the refugees, writing down their stories, recording their songs, dances, on wax discs, and in short, collecting ethnographical material that is still today a major source of documentation on Hellenism in Asia Minor, and which they bequeathed to the Greek state. Octave Merlier, the street behind the Institute is named after him, and he retired in France, but he decided to die in Greece, and is buried in the first cemetery of Athens, in the country of his heart. After the past, let's talk about the present. The present, as we can all see, is climate change, and no country in Europe probably has suffered as much over the last 3 years as Greece, with scorching summers, fires of unprecedented scale and duration, and torrential rain that has drowned the country's richest agricultural region. The future holds a prospect of disaster that would become our ordinary horizon if we failed to act. One of the major areas we need to tackle is energy. The President of the French Republic recently declared that without a sufficiently close prospect of an end to the use of fossil fuels, this battle risked being lost. At the same time, our societies must be able to manage this change without upsetting the economic and social balance overnight. In this respect, the expression energy transition says it all. To conclude this brief welcome address, allow me to return to the French Institute of Greece. For the past 6 months, we have been engaged in a process of transforming our building and our activities, a transformation that was requested by our authorities in Paris and designed to significantly reduce our impact on the environment. We call this la transformation écologique du réseau, the ecological transformation of the French cultural network. The Institute's 52 employees have organized themselves into several working groups to come up with ideas. Reducing our consumption of gas and electricity, installing solar panels on our terrace, limiting the printing of documents will all be fairly easy to put in place. On the other hand, ensuring that our events have less impact on the environment requires some imagination. How can we organize a French film festival every year in early April without inviting representatives of the industry who will inevitably be traveling by plane? How can we attract cinema goers during this festival by telling them, please do not use your car? This question may seem insignificant in the face of the major challenge of the energy transition, but they strike me as legitimate and, above all, reassuring. The public feel that it is an issue that concerns them, that everyone can make their own contribution to the common struggle. I wish you all the best for those 3 days of work.
Okay, thank you very much. Our keynote address for today is the Deputy Minister of Environment and Energy, Ms. Alexandra Sdoukou. I think she's the person that guarantees and safeguards the continuity in the Greek energy sector. She's been many years with the field. I think she has worked in so many aspects of this energy puzzle, more or less with successful results. But I think she's the most gifted person to tell us how to decode the future of the Greek energy market and what's going to happen in the next at least 4 years. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you for your kind words. You make me embarrassed. So first of all, good morning to everyone. Welcome in rainy Athens. So for those who've traveled from abroad, welcome. Sorry we've hidden today the sun and, the nice atmosphere for maintenance reasons. Monsieur le Directeur, merci beaucoup pour l'hospitalité. I'm very happy to be here today. It is the 8th symposium. And I think that it comes at a very, very interesting time, right? As here in Greece, but I think in Europe as a whole, we are trying to find the new normal, I would say. The new normal after the zenith of the energy crisis, and of course to stay the course of the energy transition, of course in this volatile and ever-changing environment. Those of you who have heard me speak in the past, perhaps you might know that one of my favorite mottos is the following, is the cheapest kilowatt hour, I'm used to say, is the one that was never consumed. But apart from saving energy, I think saving the time is also very essential. So I will try to speak, let's say, out of the box, briefly describe the main challenges facing the Greek market in the short, in the medium term, keeping always the bigger European picture in mind, and of course, how we are going to tackle them. So the first challenge, obviously, is the uncertainty ahead of the winter 2023-2024. The question is, will we face another security of supply crisis? Who knows? Of course, the output of this front, I think, is definitely better compared to last year, mainly because we have reduced our dependence on Russian gas. For example, in Greece, we have reduced this from 40 to 20%, as well as, of course, the overall consumption of gas. At the same time, gas storage levels, as you know, in the EU are already 90%. And I would say that Greece, thankfully, has infrastructure projects that promote diversification of gas, of routes and sources. I refer to the big infrastructure projects like TAP, like IGB, like Revithousa LNG terminal. So with those, we can cover not only our needs, of course, but also the needs of our neighbors, like Bulgaria, for example. So this role, of course, will be further enhanced. How? It will be further enhanced with the new infrastructure projects that will come online in the near future, like the Alexandroupolis FSRU. Projects that, in any case, are going to consolidate our role as the main energy hub for Southeast Europe and Eastern Mediterranean. Second challenge, however, in terms of energy prices. The European Union and the Greece as well I think they are not out of woods yet. And that's because a spike in the gas prices with spillover effects on the wholesale electricity prices, they cannot be excluded. And the increased reliance on LNG in the EU imports, this means as well increased price volatility. We've all seen recently, for instance, how the threat of a strike in faraway Australia has affected the gas prices in Europe. And there is a new reality, I think, and we need to adjust on this reality. But this government has shown its immediate reflexes in addressing the short-term problem of unreasonably high energy prices caused by these international energy crises. You know that in the past, with innovative policy solutions that were eventually adopted EU-wide, we managed to relieve as much of this pressure for consumers, both households, enterprises, businesses. And I would say that should the same need arise again, of course, the same reflexes will be shown. But allow me to say that the systemic and long-term answer to the question of energy prices is the acceleration of the energy transition. Because long-term security of supply, affordable and stable prices will come with clean energy produced domestically at competitive rates. And that brings me to the third major challenge, which relates to the accelerated penetration of renewables in the energy mix. In the last 4 years, you know that the installed renewables capacity almost doubled from 5.7 gigawatts in 2019 to almost 11 gigawatts today. Hello. Projects with a capacity of 16 gigawatts are under construction today, and another 37, I think 37, yes, they are queuing actually to get connection terms from the transmission and the distribution system operators. The new National Energy and Climate Plan foresees that the renewables installed capacity will reach 23 gigawatt by the end of the decade. And also the renewables produced electricity will approach, as you know, 80%. So those numbers practically mean that we need more capacity in the electricity grids to support these acute, I would say, investor interests. We also need more tools, I would say. For example, storage. More tools to make sure that the system is stable and also green electricity is available, of course, at all times. What do we have? We have the transmission operator IPTO and HEDNO that have already invested 2.5 billion euros in the last 4 years to upgrade their network. And I would say that they are stepping on the gas pedal with planned investments of more than 7 billion euros in the years to come. At the same time, we are moving fast to develop storage infrastructure, aiming for installed storage capacity of 5 giga by 2030. We have set internally a target to have 2 of them by 2025. It's hard to achieve, but we will make the best of our efforts. As most of you already know, we have secured as a beginning, 200 million euros from the RRF to subsidize standalone battery units with a capacity of 1,000 megawatt. As you also know, the first tender of the framework, the first tender of that scheme took place in August, and it was oversubscribed. We attracted offers for 3.3 gigawatt of capacity against a target of 400 megawatts. So in the next few days, we are going to announce the details of the two other tenders for the capacity, as you know, of 300 is the first one, 400 respectively is the other one. Both will take place by end of this year. And having carefully studied the results of the first tender, I think we have concluded that if we lower the CapEx support, we can increase the storage capacity to be subsidized by 500 to 1,000 megawatt. What also we are doing at the same time, we are considering incentives for existing renewable stations in order to add batteries. We want to implement this dedicated framework for hybrid stations, renewables with batteries. Note also that we have included the option as a beginning for 200, I know it's small, 200 megawatts of renewables plus storage. We have taken the clearance back in 2021 from DG Competition, and we plan now to scale up these 200 up to 1,000 megawatts. So it's a five-fold increase on that, because obviously we need storage, we need standalone, we need renewables with storage together. Having said that, we are not overlooking, of course, the importance of long-term and also large-scale storage provided by pumped hydro storage units. For instance, the Amphilohia project, which is under construction and due to be completed in 2025, 2026. I think it's an important milestone for this technology. And this is one of our main priorities looking forward. Then I go to the fourth challenge. It is related to renewables development, and this is the availability of the physical space. We always talk about the electric space, but we need to take into account the physical space. And to this end, I think that promoting projects that combine solar and wind electricity production, so achieving higher capacity factor, smoother production profile, or hybrid renewable projects that combine green electricity production with storage. And even, why not, renewable production with agricultural uses, so-called agrovoltaics. I don't know much of these, policy and how it's implemented, but I'm interested in developing the necessary tools. Why not? If this is applicable in Greece, someone has to tell me if it's applicable and what we can do for that. But I think that all these in combination, they can maximize the benefit from the space taken by each project. And we must not forget that apart from the land, we have also ample space to develop green energy in our seas. Greece has an enormous wind potential offshore. That's why we are working intensely towards the takeoff of the offshore wind parks in Greece. The National Development Plan for the offshore wind parks is due to be presented by the competent authority, by HEREMA, for public consultation before the end of this year. We are in discussions with the European Commission to finalize as well the support scheme of this technology. I I know I might sound, I don't know, very visionary, I'm dreaming, but we want to have the first offshore wind parks in Greece by the end of this decade. This is the bet. It's difficult, I know, but we are determined to win, to do the best we can. The fifth point I would like to point out is that an energy system that is powered by clean technologies differs, obviously, and profoundly from the one that is fueled by traditional hydrocarbon resources and critical minerals such as copper, lithium, what else? Nickel, cobalt, even rare earth elements. They are absolutely essential components in many of today's rapidly growing clean energy technologies, from wind turbines, electricity networks, electric vehicles, and demand for these minerals is growing very quickly. So their importance in a decarbonizing energy system requires, I think, policymakers to tackle potential new vulnerabilities, such as price volatility, as I mentioned, security of supply, the shifting sands of geopolitics, and especially, I would say, in the light of Europe's over-reliance for many of those minerals. Europe's answer, as you know, to this is the Critical Raw Materials Act. And of course, it remains to see how effective this is going to be, the Critical Raw Materials Act. But I think that this is a bet that we cannot afford to lose, because the future of the energy transition, I think, hinges upon those crucial elements. Having in mind, this is the sixth one, I'm going to finish in 2 minutes. Having in mind the extreme, as you mentioned, President, the extreme weather phenomena that hit our country in the last few months, from the heat waves, the devastating wildfires of the summer, to the rains, floodings. Daniel, what's the name of today's? Elias, something like that. Yeah. It's very obvious that our country, and all European countries actually, need to urgently increase the resilience of their critical energy infrastructure against such phenomena. This is another challenge because in the framework of climate adaptation, a new dimension must be added in the sense of energy security, the security of the energy system against environmental disaster related to the climate crisis. This is something that we haven't dealt so carefully in the previous years. So we have a new challenge ahead of us, and also as Greek government, we are elaborating on this topic to see what more we can do, especially on that. And last, I would say, but not least, another challenge ahead of us is the need to redouble, I would say, our efforts on energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is extremely important. I think I'm closing my speech with how I started it, stressing the importance on energy savings. In the past 4 years, we have launched successfully 5 programs to increase the energy efficiency of buildings. It was a budget of 2.8 billion, but this is not enough. It's not enough. The money, we don't have huge amount of money, you know, to spend by giving subsidies to beneficiaries. On the other side, we need to get close to the targets of energy efficiency. Currently, we are working in order to launch 3 new targeted programs by the end of this year. We have a total budget of 320 million for energy efficiency in businesses. But overall, what we want to see is this renovation wave that began during the previous tenure as well, turn into, if I might use the word of tsunami. I know I might exaggerate a little bit, but we have to do that. We have to turn this renovation wave into a tsunami also here in Greece with very tangible results. I think I counted seven challenges for our energy sector, but the coin, I think, has two sides. Those 7 challenges can be also 7 distinct and also rare, I think, opportunities for Greece to clean up our energy production. First, to cut off, of course, dangerous dependencies of the past, to invest in new technologies, new sectors, to create new jobs, very important, to increase regional cohesion. I think I would say to become more competitive as an economy. We have to work very intensely on that as Greece. And why not to become pioneers in the energy transition and key actors in the region's geopolitical stability, prosperity, and growth. That is how we treat those challenges in the ministry. And I think that these are challenges that we will overcome if we have a good planning and if we have sound policies. That's simple. But also opportunities for Greece to make progress, to advance, and also to excel in Europe and the world. And for this ambition, allow me to say that I hope that our track record in the past 4 years gives confidence in our ability to succeed. I don't want to tire you anymore. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm here for any questions or whatever. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Minister. I think that you will be overwhelmed with the work in the next years. Climate change, energy, both topics that will have a lot. You have a lot to do. So I'm very happy to introduce to the next keynote address, which is Mr. Fragiskos Parasiris, who is the director of the energy sector of PASOK-KIN.AL and a member of the Hellenic Parliament, coming from Crete, a place I have a lot of bonds. So, please, the floor is yours.
We've heard too many interesting things from Madam Minister, but my speech is on energy democracy. So I cannot place on what we've heard. Dear Madam Minister, dear Mr. President, dear esteemed members of the academic community, ladies and gentlemen, the energy crisis of 2021 was approached from several different political spectrums and was put into the public debate of our country as a dominant issue, defining the national agenda. It was often presented as the first energy crisis of the green era, as a revenge of hydrocarbons, or sometimes as a total failure of Europe, which seemed to be vulnerable to the geopolitical game. Even now, the energy crisis is often interpreted as a crisis of fossil fuels, as a remnant of an old era, and above all, as an omen for the future. So, in today's juncture of shocking events around us, I would say that it's time for a new out-of-the-box strategy, as Russia's invasion in Ukraine has acted as an accelerator of the EU decision-making on energy issues. Numerous discussions and goals set but never implemented, and suddenly became flesh and blood in a matter of weeks. All the national policies of the member states around energy are and must be designed to respond to the European priorities of 2030. Ladies and gentlemen, our President, Nicolas, 2 weeks ago, set the priorities and the values of a different governance model, a model based on the principles of transparency and openness. We presented the potential and the dynamics of open data in every policy field, the need of transparency, and finally how these components are necessary for the market and, of course, for the society. Having said that, for PASOK-KIN.AL, the Greek National Plan for Energy and Climate is a roadmap leading to the country's development over the next decades. We strongly believe that the formulation of such a plan should have been the result of a broad consultation between all actors and social partners. However, it's clear that within the national plan, the guidelines have already been established through a closed process involving the energy elite only. And here is precisely how we envision the core concept of energy democracy, a debate that should be determined by the rules of the democratic dialogue, open consultation, and above all, the clear terms of playing field. Unfortunately, when planning on the energy transition, society is often perceived as just the demand, as a pool of consumers, and it is not taken into account that power stations also belong to the society. At the same time, in the public debate about the security of energy supply and the risks of climate change, society is absent from the formulation of policies and ends up being the recipient of what is decided and implemented by the respective national government. In this way, social partners and citizens are excluded from the planning process, which results to the degradation of very important issues such as energy poverty, air pollution, and intergenerational equality. What we propose is a resilient and sustainable national policy on energy, which foresees special measures for the low and the middle class and plans for a leading role for our country in the energy landscape of the 21st century. We are ready to submit our own proposal for energy democracy in this transitional period. The main principles will be the fight against energy poverty, the maximization of energy security, the upscaling of the country's position as an accountable player of the energy geopolitical game, the resilience and adoption of a sustainable national LNG policy against the effects of climate change. At the political level, we emphasize on the fact that the principle of predictability and zero regulatory risk clearly affects the functioning of the market. This is mainly because when the before-mentioned are served, then the energy partners can plan ahead and be better prepared against future risks, but also ensure that the plans are implemented in a fair and democratic way, which is equally important. For PASOK-KIN.AL, energy democracy is about shifting the power in all aspects of the energy sector, from the production to the distribution and the supply, from the finance to technology and knowledge, to consumers and workers, emphasizing on social and environmental objectives. The growing power of participation enables citizens to produce and use renewable energy, contributing to the EU's energy transition. This process accelerates the transition to low-carbon energy systems and ensures that RES projects are well received by the local communities and contribute to their energy self-sufficiency. Within this context, energy communities as consumer empowerment and participatory initiatives can play a key role in driving social innovation, ensuring social acceptance, and empowering citizens to rediscover their role as consumers. However, citizens are still not seen as a dynamic component of the energy system and energy transition. As prosumers, we emphasize on the importance of the citizens' active participation in the energy landscape, developing RES projects through energy communities. It is also of paramount significance to foresee and address issues such as equal access to the network, the financing of such communities, dealing with oligopolies, and the formulation of clear objectives regarding the energy communities in the national plan. And finally, the transparency of suppliers' invoices. All these in order to further support citizens' efforts to meet their own energy needs while contributing to the decentralization and democratization of the energy system. At the same time, we have already put forward in the public debate an integrated set of policies for a fair transition that will guarantee the country's energy security and fight energy poverty, with an extensive program much bigger and broader than that implemented of building, upgrading, especially for the most vulnerable households, and the state support for the installation of solar water heaters. By supporting the 400 local land reclamation organizations, in which more than 300,000 farmers participate for the installation of photovoltaics, through which the cost of water management will be significantly reduced. By promoting small and medium-sized RES programs, so that it is possible to install photovoltaics, by modernizing and upgrading the network, but also creating energy storage infrastructure, utilizing funds from the Recovery Fund, so that the RES project does not depend on the relationship with the government, a tactic followed in the past with a monumental ministerial decision on August 12, 2022, where the remaining free space that existed was handed over to a few companies without objective criteria. And finally, by strengthening the country's interconnections so that it can benefit from the opportunities of the strategic plan of the European Energy Union. Ladies and gentlemen, dear delegates, the energy transition aiming at the climate neutrality is one of the most important objectives. So, the European Union can find and must find solutions for the climate crisis and save the planet for the benefit of the future generations. It's important to repeat that for PASOK-KIN.AL, energy democracy in this transition period primarily concerns the next generations, because energy security is a continuous journey and not a final destination. Over the past 50 years, the West has systematically invested in institutions that enhance energy security. However, fossil fuels prices volatility remains, although its nature has changed. New sources of energy are not an actual solution to the problem, but they rather shift it in time. Within this context, we understand that the energy crisis of 2021 is a crisis of both the past and the future. And speaking about the future, I want to emphasize once more on the fact that to find viable solutions for this crisis, the basic requirements that we propose is a transparent institutional framework based on the principle of equality and energy democracy. So, I have to thank you for the invitation, because events such as this help us to hear the stakeholders and the key players to place on issues that we, as a party, have in the first priority. So thank you for your attention.